Thank you, Mrs. Delvaux, Mrs. Commissioner De Coney, Excellencies, Professors, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me being here today. Being stuck in domestic politics those days, it's also quite refreshing for me to come back to the European issues and to start preparing the discussions that we will have in the framework of the Council for Energy on the 3rd of December, and having the opportunity to discuss this paper to open this discussion. Let me start by thanking the organization of the event, Atomium Culture, and the associated universities and companies for this great initiative they took as a means to address all key challenges that lie ahead of us in order to achieve a low carbon in the long term. A low-carbon economy and a low-carbon society is one of the key priorities under the Belgian presidency, and we've already had several occasions during the presidency to touch upon the future European energy policy specifically, both in light of the recently published energy strategy, which sets the guidelines, as you know, for European energy policy for the next 10 years, and which is a quite important document, as in light of the warmly expected Roadmap 2050 towards a low-carbon economy. We all need long-term visions, and we really wait for this important document of the European Commission that will give rise, we're sure, to very hot and warm discussions among member states, but with the European Parliament and with the civil society and the companies which have an interest in this issue. That will be a very important prospect, and we start preparing this discussion. We have an Energy Council on December the 3rd, as you might know, and we try and organize these Council in view of the European Summit, the Summit of Head of State that Herman Van Rompuy has planned for February the 4th, which will be, as you probably know, the first European summit fully dedicated to energy issues, which show that these energy issues are higher and higher on the agenda, and we're very happy about that because, of course, between these energy issues and the climate issues that we will discuss in a few weeks in Cancun, the links are very close, and the struggle for a low-carbon economy and society is, of course, the same for energy and climate issues in this respect. Beside a concrete objective that we will try to define, we will commit to, as energy ministers, a very important notion is the notion of transversality. Our expertise and the European energy policy that we will set should also be reflected in all other EU policy. In this context, the European strategy for smart, sustainable and inclusive growth, the European 2020, is a very good tool to apply the idea of transversality. Concretely, I think in particular of the resource-efficient Europe and the European Platform Against Poverty flagships of this strategy that will be published by the Commission soon. That will be a very important element. I must say that preparing the Belgian presidency early in 2010 and already in 2009 with my Spanish and Hungarian colleagues and friends, we realized that for the past 5 years or even the past 10 years, as was mentioned by a minister during the informal, one of these rare ministers who've had the chance to be in the council for 10 years, which is quite rare, but some have this experience. The energy minister have never had the occasion to speak of the consumer-related aspects of the European energy policy, although it is very, very important, not only in terms of the quality of the service, in terms of the prices of energy, but also in terms of awareness rising of how we could try and consume less energy and thereby contribute to a more low-carbon society. So I came up with the idea, in collaboration with the Commission, in close cooperation with the Commission, that the item of the consumer-related approach and the civil society consensus on these big issues should be one of the priorities of the Belgian presidency. And after an extensive discussion during the informal meeting in September, I have proposed to my colleagues to adopt Council conclusions during this formal meeting in December on this issue too. I don't have the intention, of course, here to elaborate in detail about the results of that meeting, but as one of the main themes of this informal gathering was related to consumers' aspects of the energy market, I would like to recall a few messages of which the relevance with today's event is striking. First, during this discussion, all the delegations highlighted the importance of the use of new technologies, and in particular smart metering, and of having them properly assessed, and if introduced, because this remains a debate, if introduced, clearly explained to the consumers. The large-scale rollout of this technology should be subjected to a cost-benefit analysis and should, in the first place, benefit consumers, including the more vulnerable ones. It is important for consumers as such, but it is also very important if we want to build and to consolidate a vast and strong societal consensus on this issue. Furthermore, the better use of European funds to improve the energy efficiency of buildings was stressed. We all know that the objective we agreed on in December 2008 of reducing our consumption by 20% by 2020 will be very hard to reach. The European Commissioner for Energy, Günther Oettinger, has stressed this problem that we have at that stage several times, and I think he really is right to stress that energy efficiency remains a major issue in the implementation of our objective, remains a very important issue for us. We know that the residential sector is not only the largest single energy end-use sector, accounting for 1/4 of total global demand, it is also where the largest energy productivity opportunities are waiting to be seized. These improvements are essential in reducing the energy bills of European consumers on the one hand, but moreover, the public service obligation should be respected at all times so as to ensure better access to energy for all. It is clear for member states that energy efficiency as an indispensable tool for a decarbonized society should be reassessed, reaffirmed, and should become one of the best and first priorities of the EU. The report, which is the basis of this discussion, the report Living in a Low-Carbon Society, is a very good paper, I think, very concise, to the point, giving a clear-cut idea of the situation. And most importantly, it gives a very clear idea of possible solutions. We've identified the issues, the challenges, and the objectives. Now we need the concrete solutions to be sure we can reach them. It proposes actions we need to take on several levels, and I really would like to congratulate Professor Browning and Mrs. Whitegren and the whole editing team behind it for their work, which I'm sure will prove to be very relevant for today's policy discussions in the energy and climate field, and hopefully other policy areas, as these teams touch upon many horizontal issues, as I mentioned earlier. In any case, I support the idea that a dramatic shift is needed in government policies, creating a higher level of long-term policy certainty over future demand for low-carbon technologies upon which industry's decision makers can rely. We've seen in a former period, 5 years ago or so, that the companies seem to be quite reluctant vis-à-vis the norms, vis-à-vis the European regulations, which they saw as constraints in the first period. And then that they've realized that these norms and these constraints could be very interesting for them, that they could be a very important impetus to launch innovation, research and development, and for the European Union to keep its advance in this field and to develop new technology. So I'm sure that this initiative and this report will contribute to the political debates, and on a transversal level it involves climate, as it involves climate and environment related, energy related, and also social and economic related policy aspects, which concern many council formations, and thereby a very good idea of Mr. Van Rompuy to dedicate a full European Council at the highest level to these issues. And all leading to a common goal, a low-carbon society for all citizens, and being acting president for another 6 more weeks, it's very, very short, on the EU Energy Council, I will do my utmost best to steer this vision successfully through the different European institutions. An extensive reflection on urban planning is also needed and is on track already. The images that are all along the report show that a lot of people today think of what could be a sustainable city tomorrow, that it generates quite a lot of enthusiasm for these new possibilities and new technologies, and we as politicians at national, European, local, regional level must rapidly enter into this reflection and give political guidance and financial support. And in this respect, I'm very pleased that the Council and the Parliament could agree on a decision to create a new fund to support local initiatives to promote low-carbon and energy-efficient technology. It's a quite modest fund, as it will only start now, but we could use the leftover of the recovery plan to launch a new fund and hope that this fund will have a long life and much more money in the future, so that the support of the EU to local initiatives, which are very, very important for politicians, but also and most of all for citizens and consumers, will be strengthened in the next year.